What's happening out there? Got a great one lined up for you today. Episode 75 from BALLBUSTERS. That's a lot. That's a 75th anniversary. We got the nature of science and the scientific method. We may finish up today. It's looking like that, and we may not. We'll just see how it goes. As usual, if you'd like to support this channel, there are PayPal and Patreon links in the info box below. Let's see who we got on the panel. I think we have the distinguished Nathan Oakley. Vámonos, muchachos.
Hola, good to be here.
Yeah, a little inside joke. Let me switch on over to Discord. Let me see what's happening over there.
Welcome to BALLBUSTERS, those of you in the live audience. Vamos.
All right, what do we got? We have the Adam Meakin.
Evening, Q8. Evening, guys. Evening, audience. What you got for us then tonight?
Sounds a bit formal.
Recap and that. Sounds fun.
We have the
Any Christmas carols?
Just tell me when you're done.
I will. I've stopped speaking. That's generally the end.
You stopped speaking for 5 seconds.
That's called holding an audience. Or just general calmness. You know I have that nasty habit, John. I apologise. Happy Christmas. Who's next?
I'll go again. I'm Nathan Oakley. You should subscribe to my channel.
Well, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Arwen, you can talk now, sir.
I can, definitely. Yeah, thanks for having me on the panel again. I loved watching that intro. Makes me miss like the first minute because of the delay, but I just love that intro. It's awesome. Good to be here again. Probably the most sober time I've ever been on BALLBUSTERS. But guess that's not a bad thing. More scientific method,
Yes.
I presume.
Yes.
It's always the same grub here. Always that scientific method.
What else you want me to do? The globe Earth debate is over. Well, it's been over since the beginning in 2015. Probably 2014. Officially, it's been over for, I don't know, 12 weeks now. It was actually over with the Black Swan, but most the Globers don't even know the argument now. So even though it's established and it's true and it's wholesome, and they don't understand it. So basically that means it's not officially over. But now, because they can't show a curved adjacent, they can't get away with, oh, it's too complicated and stuff and confuse people, right? You just have to know what a triangle is. See, once you know what a triangle is, then the entire spinning ball space monkey religion dies. So essentially what we've done, we've dug them up after 2 years, and now we're sticking forks in their eyes and laughing. So
that's grave robbery.
Yeah. So what else let's stick with, I'll tell you what, we'll just stick with science, and then we'll just whip them around by their short hairs with their fairy tale science acumen of incoherent second grader, and we'll just have fun with that.
I know. I'm just complaining like, oh, it's not that fibery shit again, But I know it's healthy. It's just that,
What you got to do?
But I'll get over it.
What you got to do with the fiber? What you have to do with the fiber? You have to go all in. That is, take one of the really high fiber cereals or breads, mainly the cereals like Fiber One or All Brand, and just build a big bowl of it. Right? I mean, a big healthy cereal bowl, and then eat that straight. You'll have no problems.
I never eat cereal, but maybe if you would know how to like make it from scratch yourself, then it would be more appealing. But
yeah, I'll whip up some cornflakes.
Yeah, whatever I told Arwen, make sure you guys don't do that.
Anyway, the scientific methods still definitely requires informing people about. I was just hanging around in some new stream I bumped into on D Live, And they were just using science all over I had to explain to them, like, yeah, no, it's actually not consensus based. And they were like, what? But I thought it was consensus based. No, 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 it's not. Has nothing to do with that. It's quite the opposite.
Exactly.
So yeah, the colloquial science is still running strong out there, like a sewer that just won't stop running, and it will require some more schooling, I guess, over the years before people finally get it.
I don't think they're going to get it. I've been out here doing it for 5 years, Arwen. They no happening.
To
They
draw
got-
a line in the sand where you object, I feel. So if you object to it all, you'll end up throwing beer cans at the TV because some advert's talking about the science of shampoo or something. Whereas if it's directly related to the argument, i.e. someone's claiming the Earth's a sphere or some sphere-related claim with science, then obviously that's when I step in. But if you don't draw a line, you will go nuts because it's abused everywhere. You know, there's not more than an hour that will go by if I'm watching YouTube that someone won't abuse the vernacular and language of science to make a point. It happens all day, every day.
Yeah. It's being echoed out there, especially among the regulars, among the average people that really don't dig too deep into it. It seems like they say, oh man, science says this and that. And they actually think inside of themselves, yeah, because there is a consensus. Because, hey, if we all know if you actually push a science believer on something technical, they're going to end up telling you science doesn't prove anything. So it's almost like they cut the entire empiricism out of there and kind of covertly replaced it with consensus entirely. And that's now the trend out there.
What
That's
do you
people
think
it is.
they think natural science is?
I think deep down, people think it means proof. So I often hear it ascribed when a really good measurement's been done. So you qualified the result that you could potentially get in the future with previous measurements that have been really well taken. And then someone will say, you know, this is science. And it's a sad shame when something is or has a decent justification with measurements. And people just say, well, you know, this is science, making it ultimately pseudoscience from that point forward when it's just good measurements, you know, good data.
Right.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Nope.
But in our arena, we're often talking about just so stories that are labelled as science as opposed to good quality measurements that are incorrectly labelled as science. Just because you've incorrectly labelled it doesn't make it wrong.
Correct.
You've got to actually show how something's wrong. And in the same way, it would be some people incorrectly often use the fallacy against us, which is to say that if you've used a fallacy to prove something as correct and someone calls a fallacy on it, it doesn't automatically actually make the statement untrue. You've got to disprove the statement or show that it's an outrageous claim that hasn't been proven by way of the fallacious logic employed. So by that standard, if something's shown to be true and then incorrectly ascribed as being science, it doesn't automatically make it untrue. It just means that the wrong label's been ascribed to it.
Correct.
That's very different to the arena here where, you know, there's nothing being proven as true and then having the incorrect label of science ascribed to it. There's nothing in the first place. There's a just so story or an imagining that's then labeled as science, which is very different.
I think they think that it's like whatever they read on Wiki or like here on Discovery Channel, that's science to them or natural science to them, which is really scary. Whenever you hear measurement, you know right off the bat that it has nothing whatsoever to do with the scientific method, because the scientific method it's qualitative, not quantitative. Now, let me caveat that. Everything's about cause and effect. Let's just take one. We'll go with vitamin C or vitamin C or lack of insulin. We'll use vitamin C here. So vitamin C either causes scurvy or lack of vitamin C either causes scurvy or it doesn't. It's either a yes or no, black or white, 1 or a 0. Now, you can have a follow-on question after that's already established. What is that level, that lower level of vitamin C measurement? That doesn't have anything to do with the cause and effect relationship. I hope everyone follows that. Yes?
Yeah, after the fact, you can qualify how much heat makes water boil.
You can,
Whereas if you've got the cause incorrect and you ascribe acid content to the boiling effect, and then go about quantifying how much acid versus how much boiling, obviously it's wrong. You've first got to have the established cause to then qualify how much of it, at what rate, etc., etc. So you need to know the cause first.
Yep.
Actual cause, not to then go on to qualify it in terms of how much.
or quantify it.
Quantify, that's the word I was stretching for.
Yeah, it's easy to get those two made. They're tongue twisters. Yes, so anything about existence, if this exists or that exists, or any measurements right off the bat, you know it doesn't have anything to do with science. But that's what most of it goes marching or parading around as. Or anything that any pseudoscientist says, that's science. And as long as he's got, like Arwin said, consensus, as long as he's got other pseudoscientists that agree with him, then that seems to be science. When that's religion. See, that's what religions do. See, the Catholic priests, they have consensus. Same thing. Natural science has nothing whatsoever to do with consensus. I think we already went over that part. Who told you guys that from Caltech? That real famous guy. What the heck was his name? I think he graduated Harvard Medical School. The heck was his name? Can't recall it.
Is it Cecil?
Who?
Cecil?
Who?
Cecil?
The Sizzle?
Cecil?
Cecil? Who the hell is Cecil?
Okay, that's a no.
He was a big old movie producer too. I'm going to have to go back. Now that I brought that up, I'm going to have to go back and find it. I'm terrible with names.
Maybe Fred?
Fred.
Fred.
Walt Disney.
Walt Disney. I think it was in the first
Let's
presentation.
circle back to your original question. What do people think science is? I think high technology-based measurements. For example, if you've got a really cool vacuum chamber measuring Tor levels, then that's science to the general Joe public. To put it into a context of something that I can qualify really easily and dig out a video if someone challenged me on it, acoustics. So you've got these massive reverberation chambers that cost an absolute fortune to put together, get down to very low frequencies because they have to be enormous, covered in materials to soak up sound and reflections. When you're at that sort of level, in very expensive technology-based rooms taking very precise measurements, that gets labelled science. Right, science. The rate of absorption in this panel has been tested in this reverberation chamber to a very, very high degree of accuracy. This is a science. It's something you'll hear. No, it isn't. It's just measuring stuff.
Well, architecture and engineering.
Technology in general, under the umbrella of technology, you could say engineering also. Yeah, absolutely. That gets labelled science all the time. Put up a bridge, get all the stresses calculated in a really precise way, and then it becomes science. That's what the general Joe public thinks, because there's a misapprehension about what an experiment is or what experimenting is. If you're testing the torsion rigidity of a steel piece of rebar for use in a bridge, and you get it to the point where it's at the perfect tension to take the most amount of stress with the minimum amount of material, and then you build your bridge, and then you go science. And when anybody questions it, you show them the measurements and the tools used to measure, and the precision in which it was measured, and everyone goes, wow, yeah, science. It isn't. The technology is what is mistaken for experiment. So that particular misapprehension is often used again by our opponents. They'll throw up a contraption and then tell you it's an experiment. And in reality, an experiment, the apparatus is kind of irrelevant. It's whether or not it actualizes your hypothesis. Whether you vary that which you assume causes the effect, and When you vary it, does it cause it? That's the only thing that is being concerned with the experimenter, the person varying and manipulating that which they assume causes the effect. Well, they're not concerned with the apparatus necessarily to do that. They might have to concern themselves with it in order to vary it, depending on the circumstances. But the apparatus isn't the test. The test is the varying and manipulating of that which you assume causes the effect you're studying. That's an experiment. But sometimes there's highly complex, if you take, say, the delayed choice quantum eraser, for example, highly complex in terms of its appearance, its outward appearance to someone looking at it as a machine. Well, the machine is irrelevant to the, I forget how you phrase this, set and forget, I think is the way you described it. It's running through the process and establishing cause and effect. That's what it's doing. Now, that's what the person who's experimenting and using that apparatus is trying to look for, the outcome. I.e., if A, then B, or if A, not B. That's all they're interested in, not the apparatus. To the layman, wow, what a cool gadget. That must be science then, because that's what scientists do, don't they? They use their whiz-bang boxes and then they come up with a story at the end. So here's a whiz-bang box, it's 2 lead balls, and at the end of it, I'm going to assert that gravity's proven with an experiment. Oh, no. Cause and effect, cause and effect. What was the effect you were studying? What was it that you thought caused it? Show us you varying it and manipulating it and then it causing it. Because if you haven't got an experiment. It's just a man-made device. Gizmo. Anyway.
Don't be so old-fashioned, Nathan. You know that modern science only requires a petition with a declaration, and then you get several signatures, and you got science.
Yeah, I think that's what the public think.
Oh, while you two guys were going on, I found who that guy was.
Is it Fred?
If it's not Fred,
Cecil. It was Cecil, after
it
all.
wasn't Cecil.
See, I thought when you said Cecil, you were joking. Then John said famous movie director. There is Cecil B. DeMille. But you're probably right now.
He's not right. I while they were talking, I put it up on screen and I was highlighting stuff just in case. But people probably not looking at the screen, so I'll do it this way. I'll go ahead and put it on the screen again. The gentleman's name is Michael Crichton.
Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Transcript
Jurassic Park, yeah.
Transcript from Caltech lecture in 2003. Listen closely. There is no such thing as consensus science. If it's consensus, it isn't science. If it's science, it isn't consensus. Period. You get it, crayon munchers? Then you could roll up here, too. I like this one. He's right on point. Science,
And we
this
all agree, so
Again?
it makes it science. I said we all
No.
agree too, don't we? So therefore science.
No,
is
science doesn't require approval.
That's a
the
little
point.
twist.
That was the most horrifying thing ever. Going to Steve the Clown McRae's hangout, talk about the Isle of Man, and literally the first question, I think Chris Monk, either Chris or Anthony asked it, was, do you guys believe in a consensus reality? And foolishly thought, they'll never say yes to this. He answers immediately without almost any hesitation. Yes, absolutely. Consensus is what makes our reality. Like, what? Well, then we've lost immediately. It doesn't matter what we do here then, does it? You think what the public agree on makes our reality, then what hope have we got of proving it with physical, actual reality? Because if the public don't agree with what I show you, then it's not real, right? In your mind.
By that standard, if you disagree with the experiment, then the experiment is wrong. Literally. It doesn't work anymore because you disagreed.
It's the other way around, though. If it disagrees with the experiment, that would be any person or any suggestion or anything written down, then it's wrong. If it disagrees with the experiment, that is. But according to consensus reality, no. If it doesn't agree with consensus reality, then it's wrong. Regardless of whether or not you've got experimental empirical validity or not. The public don't agree. We don't all agree, so no.
Well, I wonder if it would be possible. I wonder if it would be possible to devise an actual experiment that has to do with like conscious attention, and that if you would disagree with the experiment, that it wouldn't work. Maybe that's like a
What
paradox.
about
That
agree, disagree,
Yeah,
no or
yeah.
not no?
There, yeah, there, you got it right there. You're in a category error. Agree or disagree is subjective, whereas experiments are objective. So it's non sequitur.
Well, what if the test was specifically based on your perception of what's going on? And if you would engage with the experiment disagreeing with the entire notion, that it would give a different result
No, you can't
than if
disagree
you
with
would
it. You
agree
fell
with
in the
it.
trap
Did
again.
it again. Yeah, he did the same thing.
All right, it's just a
Agree or disagree,
idea.
it's no or not no.
Exactly. Yep.
And B, or if A, not B.
Yep.
And that's where the empiricism comes from in an experiment. You can't have both. You can't have A causing B and A not causing B. You can't have both. That's why it's empirical. At the end of the example given earlier by QE with lack thereof with vitamin C and scurvy, you can't have the lack of vitamin C causing scurvy and lack of vitamin C not causing scurvy.
Precisely. Yep, we're going to go over some of that today. I think down further in the presentation, there's going to be a couple examples that touch on this. Yep. But did Adam step out? He's been kind of quiet.
Strangely quiet. No,
Yes,
no.
suspiciously quiet.
No, just no point commenting on a crap experiment, is it? It's spot on. It would be. What would be the point in doing that? It's my only.
Well, to prove that opinions about something could literally alter the experiment, but it's not. You guys aren't biting it.
Yeah, but by
None
the
of us
time
are
you
fighting
get
with this, Howard.
the point
Maybe
of
it
the experiment
requires
is
the
to test
consensus
your
opinion to
hypothesis,
work.
isn't it?
Sorry.
You've got to have something to test. Why are you taking it to an experiment? If you hoping for some other effect within the experiment, then you're Cavendish, aren't you?
Can you hear the
It's
cogs
not me.
turning in Owen's brain? Think of something socially where an opinion has an effect on something. Quick. There's got to be something.
Yeah, well, that's
right.
That's fine, but that's psychology, isn't it? And then it therefore becomes a statistical analysis of something, and therefore not
Well,
science.
Well, it would fall under the same category as like influencing random outcomes, right? Which is like, well, I don't know if you could call it science, but there is a thing about it that's definitely like measurable. The results are measurable because of it. So if you could
What
put
do you
it in
say
that
about
category,
measuring?
whatever.
No,
You know what I
that
mean.
becomes probability,
this-
doesn't it?
You've got this frustrating way of saying things in a sentence that fundamentally contradict each other, but have a slight possibility of making sense of the outcome. For example, influencing, yeah, that means changing or having an influence on the outcome of, did you say random events? Those two things are in complete contradiction with one another. If
Yep.
you're influencing it, then it's not random.
Right. Exactly. You got it.
You know, the flip a coin effect, 1 or a 0 outcome. It could be computer generated, and
I'm just going
I've
to do it again.
heard,
I can sense
I've
it. I can
heard,
sense my blood pressure getting higher. I can sense my voice, my volume's going up. I can sense it all happening.
okay, I'm just referring to things I've learned before the rigidness of science. It's just that I've heard way back, way back, there was tests with this, or things you do. I don't care what you call it, things you do that would yield a result that if somebody's mind was made up, like bent towards a certain outcome, that it would actually alter the outcome of statistical average results.
Perfect. Yeah, you
That
gave us one
thing
of
you
those
do.
magical keywords that Arwen used there. So contextually, because it's the title of the show, I can definitely get away with this contextually. Arwen said test, didn't he? So contextually, when anybody says test and you're talking about science, there's only one thing they mean. That's an experiment. And an experiment is the establishment of cause or an effect you're studying, which means you've got to have an independent variable, manipulatable, cause the effect you're studying. Therefore, if there's been a test, easily ask Arwin, and he'll obviously know. What was the effect they were studying then in this test, Arwin?
I don't know. They were just doing a thing they do. So
There it is. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know isn't a good enough answer, unfortunately. Natural phenomena is the first step in the scientific method. So what are you studying? I think it was Adam that said it earlier. Obviously, QE saying it as part of the entirety of the presentation. That's what you've got to do. I wonder what caused that. Well, that's the start of science. If you find out, however, that is something made by a man, then that's your cause. That's the end. Don't need to do anything else. And now, a word from our sponsor. Do you have feelings of constipation? With just 3 bowls of juicy white fiberlicious bran flakes, you too can pass regularly.
Yeah. Fiber One or
Info box
bran
below.
flakes, they're not that high. All brand, Fiber One, those two will do it.
That's correct, Quantum Eraser. And with Quantum Eraser bran flakes, you'll poo like you've never pooed before. See the info box for more information. Now back to our regular scheduled presentation on science.
Yes,
You're right about that.
Yes, globetards pooing out curved adjacents.
I was going to say he shits all over everybody's argument. So that is correct.
See what time? Oh, we've been going for 30 minutes already. Dang. I'll tell you what, we got to jump all into this right now. That was a good segue. What do you think about that?
I think it was crap.
I'm not signing any
Good
petition.
one.
Yeah. Let's get into it. Remember, I promised you we were going to start off with what we ended up with last week was natural law versus scientific theory. I always like going over this, so I'm going to do it again because I think it's that good. I think it drives a point all the way home. And then we'll just roll on after this, all right? So check it out. Natural law versus scientific theory. They're very different animals. Scientific theories explain, the how and the why. When somebody gives you an explanation, the hows and whys should be coming, right? Otherwise, it's not an explanation of the mechanism or process and identifies the cause. For example, germ theory. Scientific theory is a result of validated, confirmed scientific hypotheses that have been rigorously tested. The problem is that's what natural laws are not. Natural laws describe, see, there's a big difference, like I said, I'll probably say it below, between this guy and this guy, mainly because they're two different words with two different meanings. Yeah. If somebody's describing something to you, that's a what or an is. It has nothing to do with cause and effect or hows or whys. They're just based, these guys, natural laws, are based solely on observations, often expressed mathematically. Like I said, the second law of thermodynamics. With natural laws, the cause and how and why mechanism are both nonsensical and valid inquiries. It's just an is and an are. Again, for example, how and why does heat flow from hot to cold always? Well, we don't know, and we'll never know. All we know, every single time, it just does and is. Ergo, therefore, natural law. That's why they're called the laws of thermodynamics and not the theories of thermodynamics. That should have driven it home for most that can fog a mirror. That's what I think. This statement right here, that's why I put it in there. Or somebody that's graduated 5th grade general science can figure, oh, I get it now. There's definitely a difference, right? Natural laws never become scientific theories or vice versa. Each are domain-specific descriptions and explanations, inherently. What should be your next objection or challenge or inquiry, right? Well, what makes the laws of physics scientific? That should be the next question. Get ready for the answer. They're not. The laws of physics are not scientific. They're natural laws. They're merely descriptions, like I said, often expressed mathematically, of plain old observations of nature. The scientific method is employed to elucidate and explain, not describe, explain cause and effect, the hows and whys, not describe the whats and the ises. Hope that's following for you, because it's as right as the rain. Now, it's not that these are incorrect, right, or wrong, or not factual. They're just not scientific. Natural laws only breach the first step of the scientific method: observe a phenomena. You can't formulate a scientific hypothesis, step 3, because a viable cause-independent variable doesn't exist. It's forever illusory. Let's have one of the pseudoscience experts out there from, where was he again? Harvard or MIT. MIT physicist Max Tegmark. We humans have gradually discovered many additional recurring shapes and patterns in nature, involving not only motion and gravity, but also areas as disparate as electricity, magnetism, light, heat, chemistry, radioactivity, and subatomic particles. These patterns are summarized by what we call our laws of physics. What are these? Is this science or pattern recognition? Sounds like pattern recognition to me. Very strange if you read this and take it all in, isn't it? Tegmark again. When we look at reality, check this out. There's a contradiction right here. This is contradictory. When we look at reality through the equations of physics, number one, that's reification. Number two, just out in front, equations are abstractions. They're not reality. They're not physical. So this got all kind of problems right off the bat. But I digress. When we look at reality through the equations of physics, we find that they describe, like I said, remember above, descriptions, right? I stressed that above. They describe patterns and regularities. What is this? It sounds like some basket weaving class, right? There's your laws of physics. They're recurring patterns and regularities. Therefore, the laws of physics are mathematical descriptions of mere observations of the laws of nature. But wait a second, my son is a video game master champion. He can readily recognize and describe the recurring patterns and regularities present in the game, all the while being absolutely clueless about the underlying architecture, that is, the software of the game. But he intuitively knows that the patterns and regularities in the game are not the cause of the game. Duh. And is my 15-year-old a scientist? That's how long I wrote this. Long ago I wrote this. I'm not changing it. I'm leaving it. Number two, how can the laws of physics, descriptions of patterns and regularities in nature via equations, have anything whatsoever to do with the scientific method, science, when the scientific method is solely based on hypothesis testing, which is only employed to explain? Again, back to explanations and descriptions. Could kill it quick right there. There's a deep chasm, an abyss, unfordable abyss between these two words: explanations and descriptions. It's as simple as that. It's not word games. It's just what they mean. Science deals with cause and effect relationships, period. The hows and the whys. You need to explain it by demonstration. Describing focuses solely on the whats and the ises. Existence. Explanations focus solely on the hows and the whys. There's kind of a big difference between describing something and explaining cause and effect, like actual hypothesis testing experiments. Watching heat flow from hot to cold or gases flow from high pressure to low pressure isn't an experiment. It's merely observing a phenomenon. Have the laws of motion, which are debunked, by the way, even if they weren't debunked, have the laws of motion ever caused a single billiard ball to move across the table? Nope. It's non sequitur. You're in a category error. This story begins and ends at the first step of the scientific method. Is that science? Nope. But we can predict. The prediction comes and saves the day, right? It's like a stick save. Yeah, right. So after observing heat flow from hot to cold a few billion times, second law of thermodynamics, without fail, you scientifically predict, genuflect, that if I set my scalding hot cup of coffee on the table for 20 minutes, it's going to get cooler? Wow, seer. Thanks, Captain Obvious. You must be a scientist. Friggin' clowns. A complete moron at the beginning of time could have reached the same conclusion in a coma. Basket weaving is more scientific than scientific law misnomer. They just throw the term scientific in front of the word. Law by mere fiat, right? Because they know their target audience are all numpty dipshits. So all they have to do is, well, I'm a scientist. Let me put science in front of this. Right? And we're good to go. Gives it that virgin white appearance of science just by mere fiat without any warrant whatsoever. It's a turkey squirrel scenario. I see a squirrel, it's a turkey squirrel. Right? That's how stupid this is. Then what do? Well, since heat flows from hot to cold always, describe it using equations, then pronounce from the rooftops, this is scientific law, i.e. science, genuflect again. This is second grade slick. It greases the skids for their propaganda efforts, like I said, Joe Coffey and Sally Salad Maker, the masses of the scientific illiterate public, to now put the term scientific in front of just about anything, right? For veracity and validation. We could just take all these numpties, right? And throw science in there. Evolution, big bangs, multiverses, black holes, gravy waves, dark matter, spinning balls, ether. See the game? If you don't, you need to be institutionalized. In conclusion, File 13, the term scientific with law as a belly laugher. It's incoherent. It doesn't fit. What they are simply natural laws. Let's stop right here for a quick one. Questions, comments?
Didn't drop in the devastating, any idiot can describe things.
Oh, I was thinking it, but I thought I'd just let that go. But you can go with it.
No, I just question. I know these presentations like the back of my hand, so when there's a bit missing, I go, I was waiting. You just wait for those little cues, right? It's this part of the presentation. It's that part of the presentation. You didn't say it, and I'm like, when's he going to say an idiot can describe things?
Jeez,
It's true.
oh, man.
I mean, I'm not saying
What about all the rest of the good stuff?
it's all good. I've got absolutely no objection to anything that you said. Brilliant.
I thought the virgin white dress of science was an actually like nice little colorful twist.
Very nice.
Yes, you're correct. Any idiot can describe something. You know, all you have to do is go down to the corner to the village idiot. He can describe anything you want, right? It's a whole other ball game to go through it systematically and empirically and validate, then explain something through the scientific method. Good?
Yeah, it's not to demean some of the most eloquent descriptions ever, as in things like the first law or the second law. You know, these are fantastic descriptions. And they're descriptions of things that occur always,
Sure.
and they've been refined. and they're never to be violated because they're accurate descriptions of things that occur always. Now, you might find someone does a better job or a more concise job of describing those things, but the thing that's occurring always is never going to change. That's the fact. Now, that thing that's happening is a phenomena. But technically speaking, you could put any of these things through the laws, but it would be fruitless. Through the laws, through the scientific method, but it would be fruitless. What would be the point? You said it is illusory. What was the word you used?
Forever illusory.
Illusory. Good word. Love it.
Don't stop. I got peanut butter in my.
Okay, so it's a good word because the whole point of the scientific method is to elucidate the cause of an effect you're studying. So to remain illusory, ever illusory, is a good way to describe it. You're never going to establish the cause of hot going to cold or high pressure going to low pressure. You can describe it, and that's what the laws of nature are describing, but you personally can describe it. Why does that happen? You might tail back to something like let's think, relative density disequilibrium. Start digging into that and then come to the description of the second law of thermodynamics and then sort of throw your hands in the air and go, okay, so we're talking about something that's described as a law of nature. Well, we're never going to figure out the cause of this. Hats off to anybody who does. It won't be a law. The moment it's got established cause, it stops being a law. It then becomes theory, I suppose. You'd call it theory at that point.
If you validate
a law.
If you validate it with an experiment, yes.
It'd be the theory of the law of thermodynamics.
Yes.
Rather than the law of the law.
Yeah.
Sorry, redundant law in there.
The theory law of thermodynamics.
Well, it'd just be the theory of thermodynamics as opposed to the law. Because the law is a description and the theory would have an explanation of the effect, i.e. established cause. So to put these things through the method would be to say, my effect is entropy, or an example of hot going to cold, and the reason, the cause of that is X, a varied X, and saw the effect of hot going to cold. The problem is that how do you ever get to the null, right? When you get to the null, it's like it just seems like such an impossible task, because how do you stop it happening? How do you get a null result? How do you get to the point where you can say a varied A and it didn't cause hot to go to cold? Well, that happens always. Right?
Yeah. You got a pretty good
Yeah, it seems
handle
like
on this, man.
You asked for filler. What you want?
No, that was really good. I'm not done with the sandwich. I had to comment. That was really good. You display a pretty good handle on these things. You got acumen with it.
So this is the most crucial bit. I know that there's people out there that are like, oh, you're still covering science. It's like, yeah, because once you've got a good grip on this aspect of it, there's not much you'll encounter that you won't question the validity of based on these simple steps that are being laid out in every single one of these ballbusters. And we may joke about Timotei adverts talking about now comes the science part. In all seriousness, that's what it boils down to. Claims that are out there made as science, you'll go, does this apply? They're saying science. Let's see if I can figure out what the effect they're studying is. Oh, the effect is how much grit you get out of a rubber tire. That doesn't sound very natural. I think they're bullshitting me. Yeah, there's a good chance they are.
Yeah, by linguistics. If you're out here for any amount of time and recently, and you ask, why are they still going over natural science? You haven't been listening to the brain dead baltards. Remember, baltards are just evolutionists in ballers' clothing, right? You haven't been out here for recently because they're still friggin' lost. They have no idea what natural science is, no idea what the scientific method is, no idea what experiment is, no idea what a hypothesis is, no idea what a dependent and independent variable is, and don't dare ask them what a null hypothesis is. Their heads will start spinning around.
I mean, I don't see the benefit of doing it for them, really. You know, I mean, obviously it's an educational platform, and we're trying to discipline the audience in actual science and pitfalls of pseudoscience. At the same token, if you are that person and you are listening to this and taking on board what's being said, I don't see it as useful to disseminate to the masses. I just see it as personally useful for recognizing nonsense, and there's a lot of it about. So, in terms of the conversion of the world, I think the education system's got it well and truly tied down so that you're of a good understanding at an early age that science is proving things. And then pretty much straight away they start looting your mind with everything else that isn't science being science, or under the banner of science, or in the classroom of science. So, you know, that magic trick, the reason the guy who's got a reverberant chamber and is measuring acoustic panels for their properties and acoustic levels and maths and graphs to present to a customer, the reason he's calling it science, or she's calling it science, is because deep down they know that that means proof. And it does. If it is actually science, that is. So that's why people do it almost instinctually. They'll say science when they're confident that they've proven something. So that's why they say it. I've proven the measurements are what I say they are on this graph. You go, okay, you have. You've proven that that is how they measure. But it isn't science. You haven't proven the cause of a naturally occurring effect you're studying. That would be science. But because you're confident in your measurement level, you know, your confidence level, which is something they put in the mathematical graphs, you know, the confidence interval, if you've got various different test facilities, there's a variation between the facilities. So you've got a confidence interval. Well, you know, how confident you are in something isn't proving something that's occurred naturally. It's not establishing why men are coming back with scurvy and coming up with a cure because you figured out the cause of the effect. You know, but like I say, people use the word because they know deep down it means proof, and people take it as meaning proof. So that's why we have the situation. But if you know what real science is, you can say, this may not actually be proof, even though the words of science are being used to make me think it's proof, because that's how I've been wired by way of education. I know better now because of watching Quantum Eraser. I know that when science is claimed, there's got to have been an independent and dependent variable and an establishment of that cause, if you're going to call it validated, through an experiment based on that hypothesis. If you know all that, you'll less often get bullshitted. It's just that simple.
Yeah, you got the masses, and then you. Oh, echo. Yeah, then you have the masses. On the other hand, you have the pseudoscientists that have been Jedi mind tricked into thinking they were scientists, because when they went to university, there was that archway they walked underneath that said science or natural. They wouldn't say natural science. They'd just say science. So that must be, if I walk back out from underneath there with that paper, that must be I'm a scientist, which gives an air of certain stature, a certain level, a certain distinction, right? They're not going to go quietly into that good night when I pry it from their cold, dead fingers and then lay waste to it with a flamethrower and then have my wolf pups eat it. That document. Yeah, because you're not scientists. That is all you paleontologists, anthropologists, archaeologists, geologists, evolutionary biologists, and yes, whatever that is, and I'm still laughing, your theoretical physicists, your astronomers, your astrophysicists, physics, cosmologists, guess what? You see that piece of paper up on your I love me wall? I'm coming and ripping it right down They don't like that. Let's continue. Taking everything we've discussed above, and for the past couple months that we've been discussing science, that is natural science, scientific method, and the empirical nature of it, then why are people arguing ad nauseum? This is for the can't fog 'em ears. Why are people arguing ad nauseum, never ending, over whether the earth is a sphere or a flat plane without quick resolution? Shouldn't that be everyone's first clue? Do people argue incessantly for years and years and years whether the lack of vitamin C causes scurvy or the lack of insulin with type 1 diabetes causes diabetic ketoacidosis? This goes back to the point that Arwen brought up in the beginning, right? This isn't based on opinion. There's no subjectivity here. This is objectively validated, proven with the scientific method. That's why no one argues it, because it's, well, duh, apodictic, self-evident. Get it? No, of course they don't. They surely don't, because all are empirical, validated by experiment. Why are you going to argue with that? You can't. It's non sequitur. See the problem? Is the earth a sphere or a flat plane? That's a cause and effect question. Or is it a cause and effect question, or is it a concrete noun? Right? Key point. Concrete nouns, or what's, is's, and existence questions are simply outside the purview of the scientific method. Only how-why questions based on observations, the first step, can be adjudicated or reconciled. It's the only way. Lowell C. Becoming a Successful Scientist, Cambridge University Press. A scientific hypothesis is based on cause and effect reasoning. Not anything else. Why don't we see grandma's cookies in here? Or Weeble's wobbling in here? Well, it doesn't have anything to do with this. It's just cause and effect reasoning. A scientific hypothesis does not merely state X and Y may be related, but explains why they are related. It's simply as that. And you can't have natural science without hypothesis. Hypothesis is the queen. And if hypothesis is the queen, and the only thing that it adjudicates is cause and effect questions, then that's it. That's all that experiment can be, is adjudicating cause and effect, nothing else. You have no viable X, so you have no Y, right? For concrete nouns. Little play on words. Letters, in fact. So for concrete nouns, for example, is it a sphere or ball or flat plane? Your only recourse is to attempt to explain the cause of either. Well, that's non sequitur, the why and the how, right? See how stupid this is? So basically, each and every single train wreck proof of a sphere, or flat for that matter, everyone bubbles and stumbles and fumbles with is a non sequitur fallacy category error on nuclear steroids in the scientific sense. Because you have, number one, no viable independent variables for either. And number two, you have no coherent question. All are inane bollocks. And boil down to, why is a bread box rectangular, true or false? Get this one, folks. This should bring it on home to you. That's essentially what they're asking in an analogy. It's direct analogy. Why is the earth flat or a sphere, true or false? That's what it's saying. Get it? Hopefully. Every single claim from the Baltard spinning space monkey congregation is an affirmative consequent formal logical fallacy. Every single one. If P, then Q, Q, therefore P. Evolutionists love this. Every single so-called proof they got is an affirmative consequent. That's why I said Baltards are just, they're evolutionists wearing Baltards clothing. If evolution is true, P, then insert any Darwinian grab bag post hoc observation, fossil, homology, similarity, genetic variation, and others, Q. 2, we observe any and all of their post hoc observations. Sometimes we don't even have that, but I digress. Therefore, evolution is true. Therefore, P, right? That's pretty stupid if you've fallen for that, right? Or if the spherical Earth with a radius of la is true, P, we will observe differing elevation angles to Polaris. How ironic this is. I wrote this years and years ago. But I digress. If the spherical Earth with a radius of la is true, we observe differing elevation angles to Polaris. Q. We observe differing elevation angles to Polaris, Q. Therefore, the spherical Earth is true. Sometimes when somebody says that or paraphrases something in that vicinity, that's what they're trying to do. Sometimes they don't go to the last up and they say, well, I didn't do the affirming the consequent. Yeah, you implied it, though, if you finish your thought. Idiots. The logical fallacy is that P doesn't necessarily follow from Q. For example, if I had just eaten a whole pizza, P, I get an echo. Go moot. The logical fallacy is that P doesn't necessarily follow from Q. For example, if I had just eaten a whole pizza, P, I would feel very full, Q. I feel very full, Q. Therefore, I've just eaten a whole pizza, therefore, P. It's the same thing that they're saying above. Right? It's a nonsense. Couldn't I have eaten a 20-ounce ribeye with fries or the old 96er? Prove the spherical Earth first, crayon munchers. What we got here in Shangri-La is a screaming testimony, documented over and over again ad nauseum, of what happens as a result of what I like to call the game. We have the pseudoscience religions, we just went over them, astronomy, astrophysics, cosmology, paleontology, geology, anthropology, archaeology, evolutionary biology, whatever that is, and yes, I'm still laughing my ass off, theoretical physics. Crocheting is more scientific than all these clowns combined. Why? Well, neither of the masqueraders above can follow scientific method. Science, stop. End of story. That's how easy it is to end it. Because the pseudoscience priests from the religions above know that Joe Coffee and Sally Salad Maker masses, a.k.a. the ball tart spinning space monkeys, wouldn't know what actual science or basic reasoning was if it landed on their head, spun around, and whistled Dixie. They then can pretty much pontificate anything under the term science, be a clumsy equivocation fallacy in second-grade linguistic word game gymnastics like turkey squirrels, and have their brain-dead religious hordes from their congregations mindlessly parrot any and all manner of blatant pseudoscience religious propaganda, aka fairy tales, that they hear directly from them or the metric tons of sermons posted on their church's website, Wiki Google, and or thousands of affiliate websites. However, when the pseudoscience priests or anyone from their congregation is directly challenged by anyone with a 5th grade general science acumen or better, or can fog a mirror, whichever comes first, they then, without coherent rebuttal, call the challenger names, pick an appeal to ridicule fallacy, akin to the tactics employed on the 2nd grade playground, carpet bomb a barrage of logical fallacies, contradict themselves with every other breath, and muster their hordes and appeal to the consensus, fallacy by the way, of their pseudoscience congregationers and priests. That's all they do. That's all we've been doing for 5 years. I just described it for you. Listening to this garbage. It's simply pseudoscience religion, parroted incessantly by fanatical, indoctrinated wankers spinning space monkey ball tards that couldn't tell the difference between a Bunsen burner and a beach ball. Then they rail against religion with voracious anger. You've heard them before. All the while being neck deep in one. Scientifically falsified religion, by the way. This is a real carnival tent show. Mind-numbing wittery. Thanks, Globetard Goobers, for perfectly illustrating the end. Uh-oh, we have an encore. Let's see what we got here. Smoking through this. Hey, scroll down. All right, punk you. Professor admits physics profs brainwash students with propaganda. This is from Physics Today. Certifiable, documented. I'll give you the citation down here in a second. I think it's Physics Today. Listen closely. And I use that trust to effectively brainwash them. We who teach introductory physics have to acknowledge, if we are honest with ourselves, that our teaching methods are primarily those of propaganda. Really? We appeal without demonstration to evidence that supports our position. We only introduce arguments or evidence that support the currently accepted theories. Why would you need to accept theories, scientific theories? I digress. And omit or gloss over any evidence to the contrary. We give short shrift to alternative theories, introducing them only in order to promptly demolish them, again by appealing to undemonstrated counter evidence. That's just linguistics. We drop the names of famous scientists and Nobel Prize winners to show that we are solidly on the side of the scientific establishment. All of this is designed to demonstrate the inevitability of the ideas we currently hold, so that if students reject what we say, they are declaring themselves to be unreasoning and illogical, unworthy of being considered as modern thinking people. Of course, we do all this with the best of intentions and complete sincerity. Oh, I'm getting all goosebumpy. I have good reasons for employing propaganda techniques to achieve belief. Who is this guy? Who are these people? Joseph Goebbels? So I, like all my colleagues, teach the way I do because I have little choice. But it is brainwashing nonetheless. When the dust settles, what I'm asking my students to do is to accept what I say because I, as an accredited representative of my discipline, profession, and academia, say it. Linguistics. All the reason, logic, and evidence that I use simply disguise the fact that the students are not yet in a position to sift and weigh the evidence and arrive at their own conclusions. Singamano, Teaching and Propaganda, Physics Today, Volume 53, June 2000, page 54. Say good friggin' night. Questions, comments?
It's the audience that should ask themselves the question, do you not find that scary? Were you unaware? As if you were, that should be quite scary, hearing all of that.
Gordzilla, shout out to Gordzilla, Super Chat. Haven't had too many of those. Merry Christmas, QE. Merry Christmas, Gordzilla. Keep the Christ in it. Yes, sir. We might be heading back that direction with the next Ballbusters. Don't know when that's going to be, but we may be heading that direction. What time we got? 3:07. You got 30 minutes. That's the end of the science presentation. Natural science presentation, excuse me.
Outstanding.
Yeah, it's been a run, but well worth it, I feel.
I think we're going to have to go over it again.
Oh, there's
Yes,
no doubt
no.
about that. 2022 will definitely be going over science again.
I think not. somebody back in chat a while back, shortly after you'd said what you'd said about needing to go over it, and they cite the Michelson-Morley experiment.
What?
I know. Just give me humour me. Was tampered with. The original hypothesis was to find out if the Earth was moving. It had nothing to do with ether. And I think that kind of I'm not attacking this person. It's just a good example of still not kind of grasping definitions and terms. There's no problem with citing Michelson-Morley what they did, but to use the term experiment implies science. And unless you're going to state explicitly that this is a zetetic experiment, then by implication you imply science. And I think more fundamentally, just the next point was, and the hypothesis was null because no movement was detected. And that, I think, probably wants addressing. That shows you're not grasping what the scientific method is all about and why it offers such certainty in its results. And the difference between that and a zetetic, logical conclusion experiment, which doesn't in any way define a cause and effect. It goes a little bit back to what that quote you took apart in the middle bit of the presentation, John, where that read as a disclaimer to me more than anything about what's about to go off. Can you pick it up was my point, but that I think it's still pertinent, and there might be a need to come back to it, because I still don't think it's necessarily fundamentally clear when we're talking about natural science what we're talking about. Still think there's confusion with the stuff that supports, well, not necessarily, stuff that certainly attacks the ball with logical evidence, but for us to still be describing that as experiment and science, I think it may need to be revisited in the new year still.
Yeah, but Adam, I fell into that too, and it wasn't until I came here that I learned and understood it. So unless they come here, you're right. We got to keep going over it and over it and over it. You got guys like, I was listening to Robbie Davidson. They say everything they did was pseudoscience, but they'll go on to quote Michelson and Morley in the next breath. So unless you come here, or I don't know any other place that's giving it like this.
It's just about recognizing. It's not to decry it. It's just about recognizing it for what it is. Yeah, and it doesn't earn the label or the title science. Oh, excuse me.
You okay?
Excellent.
Back. They always come in threes, those bloody sneezers, don't
Yes, they
Sorry.
do. I wish the mute would come in threes.
I couldn't get there in time. My face had already clinched up, John.
Gotcha, man. Some of those come quickly. You can't do too much about it, man. You know when it's real bad when you got stuff in your mouth?
Banana or peanut butter.
It happened to me yesterday. I tried to chew it down real quick. Nope, didn't make it. You got to be careful because of the first onset of it, right? Is a breath in. So you got to be careful, man. That's a choking hazard. So I got another good question in regards to that. Why don't we sneeze while we sleep?
I've woke up to sneeze.
Exactly.
You'll never, ever get woken up by a sneeze, not yours.
No, not by a sneeze, but I've woken up to sneeze.
No, you haven't.
I have.
No, you haven't.
Yep, personal experience.
No way.
Woken up to sneeze, just like I've woken up to be sick. Not woken up sneezing. I've woken up knowing I've got to sneeze and then sneezed. Right. I've never sneezed in my sleep.
Damn, I got 1,166 likes.
Yeah.
That happened to me the other day. And somebody claimed that I've been buying them. I'm like, no, this I didn't say this to any of the commenters, but I'll say it now. It really annoys me because it ballses up your stats. So, I don't know. It doesn't please me when I see some really strange, disproportionate number of likes versus the number of live viewers being like, I don't know, 0.1% of it or something stupid. So you'll see by the end of the show, it might rise to 3,000 something like it did on one of my live shows. And then drop back down to 2,000 when they correct the problem, because obviously 2,000 likes on a video that's had 1,800 views is perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
Well, I was watching right as it was shooting up. It all happened all together in about 30 seconds. Like bang, 100, another 100, bang, 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 all the way up to 1,100. And then it stopped.
That's my fans, man.
I don't know what that was. I know I got a bunch of trolls in the chat now constantly whining about how you bought the subs. Like you would even know how to do it.
Yeah, that's why I
would
never
you
trust.
bother?
What?
Seriously, why?
I know.
John, why would you bother? There's 57 people watching. Yeah. Why would you think that 1.1 thousand likes is reasonable? You just attribute it. Why would anybody invest any time or effort in that? It's kind of an irrelevant thing anyway. Interesting that Arwen's watching these things, sees how they come in, and then also notes that the ballers are now using it as a reason to ad hom or make strange claims. I wonder what the cause is really. Is this all the ballers have got to do now? Is give us extra thumbs up and then accuses us of giving ourselves extra thumbs up?
That's what it's
Yeah, I
come
was
down
wondering
to,
that too. Yeah, maybe they did do
Good
it.
way to spend the night.
That's the problem. Only 57 people watching.
What are you gonna do, man? Listen, let me tell you something. I never ever trusted numbers from anything. When I first come out here, not even on YouTube, evolutionists used to be that way, man. They used to because everyone would agree. Here we go with consensus again. They'd judge the veracity of their arguments by the number of thumbs up they got. Right? It used to crack me up. I'm there. What are you doing? You eating paint chips from the 70s again? Right? So I don't trust the numbers, any of them. That's just me. And I don't think about them. Ever.
So you think more than 57 could be watching? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know.
Well, I hope so.
Can I go sideways?
Go
There's
ahead.
a slide on screen. Flat Earth math on screen, old school. I noticed in my feed, I've not watched the video. He's back and has produced a video this week. So I don't know if anyone else had noticed it, but
Scary.
welcome back, Flat Earth math. It's fun to hear what you've got.
I was the first commenter. So as soon as he published that he was going to have a live stream, I went into his live chat and left the following question: how can you have served adjacent whilst acquiring an elevation angle?
Was that your usual dip and leave, Nathan, and just do that and gone? Didn't bother wasting any time, like? Or did you see any of it?
I mean, I don't watch this crap, so going in and leaving a comment is the best I'm going to do.
That's what I was assuming.
Flat Earth math.
I prefaced my comment with I hadn't actually committed to any of my own time to watching his video. Well, Have you had a response?
I wasn't expecting a response. I'm just inflicting pain.
Happy Christmas.
I'm serious. There's a lot of it. I mean, the ballers that react and send message after message after message telling me that sextants only work on a globe, right? If they don't realise what I'm doing on the other side of the screen, so to speak, I'm going, wow, this really has caused them a lot of pain, hasn't it? Oh dear. Yeah, share your pain. Tell me how this obviously flat Earth tool that measures straight lines, flat baselines, and elevation angles. You tell me how that's working on a sphere. Just blast it out 5 times in the chat. Chant it. Because it'll make it real if you keep saying it. So yeah, they're in a lot of pain at the moment. I mean, a lot of pain. It's great. It's really amusing.
I sent it to NDT, Neil deGrasse Tyson. I still haven't gotten an answer.
Probably ruined his Christmas now.
One can hope.
Seriously think it's going to ruin a lot of people's Christmas. The more we focus on it and the more we give the detail, the more we come back to the original point. You've got to have a flat baseline. You've got to have a straight line. You're measuring angles. You know, it always comes back to that. So there's nowhere for them to go. You know, they desperately try to talk about how they can square that circle after the fact with the presupposed sphere. But they've always got this big straight flat line set on top of a circle. It does make me laugh.
All right, the room's open. You got 15.
Is everyone unmuted, John?
Got 25 minutes. Hold on. I haven't been doing my job, man. I've been back here laughing. Citation police is off mute. Oh, sorry about that, A person. I haven't been doing my job. Sorry about that. Shout out to Betty. Go ahead, A person. What do you got?
So it's pretty funny listening to you guys, man.
Well, thank you. We'll be in the area all week. Citation police, you're off mute. Or moot, using the parlance of our time.
No. The problem is I didn't get unmuted till I was in bad signal.
Yeah, it sort of happens that way, doesn't it?
So here's what I've heard.
What have you heard?
The flat baseline isn't equivalent to the surface. All you need is a flat baseline, but it only works on a globe.
A flat baseline working on a sphere? That doesn't make any damn sense.
No, it was phrased in this respect. All you need is a flat baseline, but it only works on a globe.
Yeah, that's contradiction. That's holding two mutually exclusive, contradictory thoughts at the same time. That's true at the same time. Sorry.
So I guess the premise would be it doesn't matter whether it's flat or a globe. You just need a flat baseline, but it only works on a globe. Couldn't work on a flat Earth.
Well, it really just gets down to what a triangle is. That's where it actually goes. So you can't get around it with any Elmer Fudd sophistry. They're not going to be able to Jedi mind trick incoherent third graders. That's at the level that we're at now. Because you'd have to deny what a triangle is. That's at the level that we're at this point. Yeah.
They'll try to kid themselves so they can take it to the center of the ball that they're creating a tangent. But as what Nathan alluded to earlier, in doing so, they end up with a straight line that only touches the Earth, and from that point on, goes out into space. Now, mathematically, that's the line that is the return journey. When you calculate the GP, you're going to draw a circle of equal altitude from that GP, from the end of that line. Yeah. When we take the sextant, we create the line, and we also create the length from the heavens. That's the reality of what's happening. What they want to do is just take that little bit, yeah, and ignore the fact that to come back once they've calculated the GP, it's the same line you travel back on, yeah, to create your radius. That's where it becomes very tricky for them. It's easy for them to reconcile in their head, as Nathan takes the mickey out, to create a straight tangent line into space. But all of this works together. They can only reconcile it in their head in little segments. It doesn't work together in their world.
So what is the GP? Is the GP the angle, or is it below the star in a distance in miles or something?
The GP is a place of that star in time in the star map. And its location is...
but where? Like
calculated
over what?
90 degrees above whoever's head that's looking up there. Like if it was a conceptual person there, if they look 90 degrees,
But it's not
directly-
above you, the observer, right?
No,
No.
So it's
Otherwise
out.
you'd
It's
know
out.
exactly where
It's
you
out
were.
on the z-axis somewhere, a certain amount of miles.
yes,
Okay, so I've heard this argument that the azimuth, or sorry, not the azimuth, the instrument is only doing an angle, so it's two vertices into infinity, and therefore there's no third leg, therefore it's not a triangle, therefore you're debunked.
no.
But if you're saying the GP is the star floating above a point out on the z-axis, then that is a triangle.
It is a triangle. That's what an elevation angle is. That's how you get one.
Yeah. Now I asked a guy who claimed to be some kind of boat expert, because he had this graphic to use where it's like a red line out to the quote unquote horizon, which he called the Sagittah. And I said, so what's the distance of that red line? And then he spazzed and left. He said it's some advanced trigonometry.
Oh, really?
Just a circle.
Wow.
I said the Sagittah is just a circle segment formula. It's supposed to be, you know, the apex arc of the hump of water between point A and point B.
Did you ask them to define what trigonometry is?
That's a good one.
You should have done that. That would have been a laugher. Yeah, it's over.
So I think one of the premises of why they think it only works on a globe, obviously it's because of the sky, but from the ground-based perspective is the idea that any horizon dip correction means that the Earth is steering away from you.
No. There is no horizon dip correction. It's it's called dip correction, not horizon dip correction. It's called dip correction, and it's only the observer's height above sea level. That's all you're correcting for.
Okay,
So-
so the horizon, they don't have to scope the horizon at all?
Yeah, they do, but there's no dip correction associated with the horizon. You're getting two arguments
Don't-
conflated.
Why scope the horizon at all then?
You got to scope the horizon, man. You need the straight baseline.
Established
you-
Yeah, but I
Using-
think in the mind when you shoot that line out, because in the graphic that I was shown, it's a red line from the observer's eye point that goes at a diagonal downwards to the quote unquote horizon or wherever it intersects with
Where,
water.
when do you look down to the horizon?
Well, you don't have to. It renders
You
in your
don't.
eye regardless
You
if you're
don't
looking down.
ever.
interject. Sorry to interject. At that point, trying to establish something that will give you 90 degrees. Now, if you're measuring the degrees in the sky, you still need 90 degrees to your zenith, at your sky angle, but you're going to minus 90 off it to give it you on the ground for the GP of the star. So all you're ever talking about is a box. So when they say looking down at the horizon, like, well, no, you're trying to establish a horizontal. So you can have 90 degrees at the zenith of the star. Well, that's what you're
Yep.
trying to do. That's the whole point of what you're trying to do. Figure out where you are and move around on the ground. Well, the figuring out where you are bit needs you to have a flat baseline, and that's what you're establishing with the horizon. Now, further to that, this is where I was going to interject earlier, but I held my tongue. You don't necessarily need to do the dip correction at all, and you don't necessarily need the horizon at all. So if you're establishing horizontal by another means, then you don't need the horizon. There's various other sextants that use various other methods to establish that baseline. Well, that's the process. That's what you're trying to do. So, and that's done, i.e., you're not using the horizon. There's no need to correct for your height above sea level in that regard, because once you've established a true horizontal at whatever altitude you're at, there's no further correction to be made. If, for instance, you used an artificial horizon, you lay a mirror on the ground, and you do it that way, well, other than limiting your tool by 50%, you've no need to do any dip correction. You've got a horizontal. And the GP of the star, because it's in a box, it doesn't matter if you draw the line halfway up that box. You'll still have the GP be below because it's going to intersect whatever line you've established as horizontal in the air, for example. GP is still going to be directly below that line when it intersects the zenith line from the star to the GP. Your horizontal still intersects it. Now that all goes to hell if it's on a curved surface. You don't get away with not correcting for the spherical Earth if that's what they're claiming when they say dip. Because suddenly when you draw your line out perfectly horizontal because you've established it with a, I don't know, artificial horizon or a bubble sextant, you can't have that line reaching the GP of the star and then being directly below it. It no longer is if it's on a curved surface. But that principle's what you're employing when you draw that box and minus it away from 90 if you're measuring an angle in the sky.
Yeah, no matter what you would assume is below you, whether you use the horizon or you just do your altitude over sea level, you're creating a reciprocal triangle with two parallels. The one parallel is the baseline straight out from your observation point, and the other parallel would be the surface.
Exactly.
Now, I think, like, because remember, this is the old argument, and I've been noticing this. I've been lurking, listening in the background. Is that like guys like Zanuck and guys like M. Scott Veach, when pressed into a corner, the linchpin of their faith in the globe is the idea that the horizon is a physical location that they've witnessed with their own eyes, either lowering as they gain in altitude or things quote unquote going behind it. And because they've experienced this in real life, and their bias is that this is an object constancy problem where it is a physical object that's lowering, on the y-axis, or this object that's disappearing is going underneath it. I think that's one of the reasons why they can't get their mind out of it, of why it only works, or they claim like all you need is a flat baseline, but still it has to be a curved surface.
They don't understand the black swan then.
You can't have a
Yeah,
flat.
Yep,
You can't have a flat. Oh, let me jump in here. You that's another contradictory married bachelor you just stated. Not you. I'm just saying what you say. They say. That's on its face. Contradictory horseshit.
So I had an epiphany a few days ago because I recognized that there's this stage in psychological development for a child.
Mhm.
It's called something similar to the object constancy.
I was going to say object permanence.
Yeah, object permanence. That's what it is. Object permanence realization. Like when your mom holds a ball behind her back, it's actually still there. Or when you only see half the ball, you recognize that the other half of the ball exists behind your mom's back.
That's Piaget's dolls, isn't it?
Also why peekaboo works.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what Piaget's dolls is. It's when a child, you take it out of their field of view, and it's at what age do they recognise there's a permanency to that object and think I can get the doll from behind the screen. It's there still. It's not disappeared.
I can get the boat from behind the horizon. Now, funny enough, we're using a ball as an example. So just like we had this argument the other day, and a kid brought up.
Just 1 second.
The kid brought it up. Go ahead.
Just 1 second. QE pointed out that on its face, what they give you as a rebuttal is completely contradictory because you can't get an elevation angle from a curved surface. But you didn't respond to him. I don't know if that bit sunk in that regard, though.
Oh yeah, but you also can't get an elevation or an object constancy from an apparent position.
Yeah, this is why they've spent 24 months sticking their head in the sand over the black swan. Black swan essentially takes away their physical Earth curve horizon. Earth curve was taken away from them in the black swan argument. That's the long and short of it.
Citation.
I have
say that last comment again, because that's really cool. They can't get a again.
You can't. Oh, sorry. I want to phrase this in a question because Nathan had been saying lately, like they're asking, them. Well, how do you get an elevation angle with a curve as one of the sides? How would you do that math? So I phrased it in a question. How's it go? Oh yeah. How do you get the physical location of an apparent position? Well, how do you do that math?
That's totally crucial to their bullshittery that they're going to use dip correction for the horizon. Okay, that's the point of it all, and this is why the black swan works so well in synergy with the sextant. Yeah, and why it destroys the supposed ways of calculating dip. Yeah. The purpose of dip is to recognize that we have a field of view. Now, if we had infinite view, then the horizon would render infinitely far away, i.e. at 90 degrees. But we don't have that. And our view is affected by a number of things. And not art. So this is what the dip correction does. And some of the stuff Ten's dug out is starting to describe that now. And mathematically, this cone of view, it creates the same, because they want, it's counterintuitive, but actually what's happening is exactly the same thing. You're taking angles away, and that's what happens as you go up in height, and how the cone of view adjusts, and so I'm just finished. But so that's the point. If they want to go there, okay, then and in doing so, they render the horizon. They have to mathematically render the horizon as the physical edge of the ball. Yeah. In doing so, they then contradict what you said earlier. You've got two sets of parallel lines working together. That no longer works anymore. The purpose of dip correction is a recognition of optics. We're not. Its function isn't to deal with geometry specific per se. It's to deal with optics and how optics pervert because you're using an optical device to level, and how your height above the surface is affected by that optical perversion. That's its sole purpose. It does not deal with any change in the surface. It assumes the surface is flat and level for its calculation.
I want to shout out Brian brought this to my attention. So that perversion that's being detailed by Adam, the correction is to get it in line with the pure geometry. And the pure geometry straight and flat.
Yeah.
He's got about 10 minutes before he's got to wrap up this show.
Yeah.
So is there anybody who's dead keen to get, thank you, Citation, please, by the way, that's dead keen to get some points in on this finale of the Scientific Method 2021?
Well, if nobody else is piping up, so I'll throw this by Adam. So he says it would the horizon would render infinitely far away, but so the horizon being rendered as something in the distance only occurs with a sentient observation, meaning a mind looking through a set of eyes, because only a person can see in 3 dimensions. An image taking device computes the z-axis and the y-axis as the same axis. There's only 2 axes in an image. So the horizon doesn't render far away, it renders higher or lower on the y-axis in the plane of the image, which is why, like in the Black Swan, you have no idea how far away it truly is. You just know that there's a marker in front of it that's a certain range. And so you could say it's greater than this distance, but you really have no idea how far away it is.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, we don't know how far it is. Absolutely. How far it is. What's it? Not actual location where the sky appears to meet the sea in that instance. Yeah. We can't know that. That's just absurd. But what we do know is what appears as the point where the sky meets the sea is beyond the distance demarcated by those oil rigs. And you're correct. You can't say it's at X distance, especially not with a 2-dimensional photograph. Even if you were there on the day, you can just say it's beyond 9.4 miles.
It goes
Well,
nice to the
physical Earth
quantity quality point, Nathan. That doesn't
Yeah.
quantity over quality.
But quantity versus quality. But when their qualitative account for the horizon is that it's physical, and you show it beyond a physical limitation, it's no longer Earth curve.
Yeah.
Very devastating.
Let me ask
for
you
our
this
brain.
question.
You better make
Why
it
do they
quick.
believe it's a physical? Why do they believe it's a
You
physical
better make
location?
it quick. You got
They need it to
5-minute
be.
warning just to let you know.
Because
It's
they
the
need it to
fundamental
be.
premise of I'll answer.
Yep,
It's-
perfect. So let
I'll
me
answer.
go ahead.
Answer you. It's the fundamental premise of their religion. That
Yep,
Earth has a
yep.
curvature. That's the horizon. That's why.
Yeah, but I'm speaking more to the personal. I'm speaking more to the personal, qualitative, experiential affirmation to oneself, and I'll get my point real quick. In light of all this stuff going on, with all these arguments back and forth, I've noticed that many of the Globers, when pushed on the basis of their faith, they will tell you that they have seen the curve of the Earth with their own eyes. And when asked, well, where did you see the curve of the Earth? Their reply, almost without fail, is I saw the bottom of something disappear.
Yeah, it's because they don't understand optics. They don't know what's going on.
Yep. They've got that object permanency problem where they can't conceptualize that just because the bottom of something disappears doesn't necessarily mean it went behind your mom's back.
Okay,
Right.
as we've only got a few minutes left before QE rounds out this show, I've got a short video which I edited together, which is going to go out at 1:45 the hour, which is pretty much when this show's going to be rounding out. So I have been spamming it in the chat. Be here or be sphere on Nathan Oakley 1980 for a premiering clip, which will be about 15 minutes or so long, about blue marble science. And as amusing as it is when we're discussing the curved adjacent, it's predominantly focusing on that particular issue. So be here or be sphere on Nathan Oakley 1980. Link will be in the chat. Anybody else got any last words? Because I know Q is going to rush us to the end pretty soon.
No, I still wanted to respond to what Citation Police had to say. That is, there's a reason why they misunderstand optics and think that bottom-up obstruction or apparent obstruction is caused by curvature. That's because they exclude that typical effect in their curvature math. So they exclude the effect. So yeah, what's it gonna be? It gots to be the curve, right? Because they don't actually have the full picture of what's going on in optics when they do their thing.
Right.
Yeah, but
So
ultimately,
I'll ask this polling question.
No,
Go ahead.
negative. Stop.
yeah, let me round it out. Earth curve is the horizon for a heliocentrist. That's just a fact. It is marked with an X, labelled horizon in the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking curve calculator. If you're a globe believer or anti-flat earther, the horizon is Earth curve to you. We've just debunked it as Earth curve with the Black Swan, beyond the physical limitations that an Earth curve edge would offer.
Yep. Over. All right, hey, Nathan. Yeah, that's going to be it for today. Nathan, sir, my good man.
Whoa!
Take us
Whoa,
home.
whoa, whoa,
Oh, we're going. Take us
Whoa.
home. I'll
Adam's
mute
got
you.
one last,
Anyone
one
wish
last word and
people
then
happy
I'll round us
Christmas?
out.
I will mute you.
Anyone say happy Christmas?
You think I'm kidding?
Big Grinch. Happy Christmas. I'm done.
That was a
Yes,
quick one. You
indeed.
know better. Go ahead, Nathan. Take us home, sir.
As the next Ballbusters will be after Christmas, a happy Christmas and a festive New Year to one and all who are watching currently on Ballbusters. Obviously, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you tuned in live on the Quantum Eraser YouTube channel. Smash the super chat, like, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Another massive thank you to all of today's Ballbusters panel for making the show possible. And another thank you to all of the public for joining and making the interactive part of this Ballbusters possible. I've been Nathan Oakley. Tune into Nathan Oakley 1980 for my premiering stream, which will be starting right about now. And we will see you all in the next Ballbusters.